going to have a rather light meeting this morning, but I did want us to meet so that because we haven't met in the last couple of months, and I know we do have a few things that we need to go over that are of rather utmost importance. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting into session. Good morning, everyone. This is Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. Calling this ethics board meeting into session. The time now is 9 a.m. Moving forward to the item A on our agenda, which is roll call. Ms. Kangura, can you take roll call for us?
Each member is acknowledging that they are attending the meeting via Zoom and that they are located in Wayne County, Michigan, unless otherwise stated when I call your name. Mr. Young has requested an excuse. Mr. Thomas?
Present.
Mr. Schaefer?
Present.
Ms. Lewis?
Present.
Ms. Hammoud?
Present.
Dr. Carnell has also requested an excuse. Chair Pinkins?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Kangura. Okay, moving right along, we're going to move on to item B of our agenda, which is approval of the July 21st, 2021 meeting minutes. Has all members received a copy of the meeting minutes from the July 21st, 2021 meeting?
Yes. Yes.
And at this time, are there any questions or concerns regarding those meeting minutes?
So I wasn't in attendance last meeting.
Yes.
Would I still be part of like the approval of the previous meeting minutes?
Yes, if you received a copy of the meeting.
Yep.
Do you approve of them? Are you having any concerns or any suggestions or?
Yeah, like for the like usually when someone not in attendance, I see like excused. I see mine like absent. Just was and when I went, I know it was like special circumstances. Like in those, like we attended one, and I think share you like the one before that, maybe in June, and because of. Like we had a quorum, but like we didn't have a chair or vice chair at the time. And then like the June and July were, I want to say, like different meetings. So I just want to like for the record, state it's not like that I missed it just because I decided not to attend. It's just, when I checked my email, because of the sad situation with Mr. Williams as well and everything else, it was pretty confusing.
Yeah, the chair recognizes that. Thank you, Ms. Wood. Thank you so much for those words. Yeah, we do recognize that. And so since you did receive a copy of the meeting minutes, I do understand that you may not have been here, but if there's any concerns that you have with any of the entries, please let the board know at this time. Anyone else at this time as well? If there's no questions or concerns, we're going to move to adopt the meeting minutes. And at this time, the chair will accept a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from July 21st, 2021 meeting.
Motion to adopt. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Thomas. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The
Aye.
ayes. Okay, the ayes have it. So moved. Moving on to the next item of our agenda, which is item number C. This is unfinished business. At this time, I'm not sure we have any unfinished business. Any members know of any unfinished business? We have Ms. Kangura, Mr. Slezak, any unfinished business for this board?
I believe there is none, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kangura. All right, this time we're going to move right along to item D of our agenda, which is new business. Number one, which is discussion of selecting a new attorney for the Wayne County Ethics Board. Now, we all know with the recent passing of Mr. Williams that and even before the passing of Mr. Williams, Mr. Domzo was gracious enough to step in. He is with Williams and Costa. Mr. Domzo did express to me that he is in the process of winding down the affairs of Williams and Costa. Apparently, the majority of the firm was run by Avery Williams. So Mr. Domzo is in the process of winding down the practice. He did inform me that He is willing to serve as the attorney for the board through the end of this year, but at this time, he's actually commuting back and forth from Colorado and while he's winding down the affairs of Williams Acosta. So this board is going to have to begin to discuss selecting a new attorney for the board. And just to sort of put it out there that the last time we selected Mr. Williams to serve as the attorney for the board, the way the process worked is each board member put forth names. We discussed it. After some time, some motions was made, some more discussions took place, and then we took a vote. We can follow that process again. Obviously, if the board members would like to do an interview process, screening process, the chair would allow that as well. It's the chair's concern that we look to find someone that has the same amount of experience that Avery Williams had. Mr. Williams had a significant amount of parliamentary law experience. He had experience advising boards this matter. And also, Avery wasn't afraid to step on toes. We have to be honest, we are a sort of a watchdog group. We do monitor Wayne County public officials, employees, departments to make sure that they're complying with the ethics ordinance. So someone who may feel a little bit intimidated going and taking subpoena papers and things like that from various department heads may not be the right fit. And I think utmost, we want to make sure that we're picking someone that's going to be loyal to this board. Now, in full transparency,
all these guys overmanage,
yes. Can you mute your microphone there for a minute so we can finish? Now, also, in full transparency,
that's how it goes. I got that.
The chair is just going to say that I did receive a call from a department head who suggested possibly us selecting an attorney from a list of attorneys that apparently the county keeps. My concern with that was, how do you get onto this list? Is it some sort of political patronage? And also, I was concerned that we don't want to select someone that's going to, again, be beholden to a particular department, some particular public official. This department head, and again, I'm actually friends with this particular person, so he called me, in a friendship capacity. But so I'm not going to mention his name, but he did mention an attorney, and not so much as to influence the process, but he threw a name out there, and that name. And after he did put the name out there, I did give him a lecture on how this board works, again, to make sure that there's no attempt to influence this process. He did mention a gentleman named Alan Venable. Now, the reason why I put that out there is because that was the name that was mentioned. If
Mr. Pinkins?
Yes,
Mr.
hold on,
Pinkins?
Mr. Thomas, give me a minute.
I caught the first name, but I didn't catch the last name, sir, and I apologize.
Alan Venable. Now, and the reason why I'm putting the name out there because this person suggested that name. Now, the chair's concern is that there's no influence in this process. So it would be the chair. Now, any board member, if they want to put that name forward, are entitled to do so. The chair would not vote for that person just because it could be seen as though, and this was a telephone conference that we had, it could be seen as though there was some sort of influence in this process. We have to be concerned that the ethics ordinance does say that public officials, appointed officials cannot influence the appointment or the acceptance of employment of any friends or family. So we do have to be concerned with that. So I did give this particular department chair a sort of a lecture on how this board works. So with that said, we can look at the process. If any board members knows any attorneys that they want to suggest and put their names forward, we will begin to discuss that. Again, like I said, we will have discussions on the person's qualifications. If there's a recommendation or motion to start an interview process, again, the chair will entertain that. But I just wanted to sort of put that out there. Now, with that said, the chair is going to turn it over to the board to have some discussion. We don't have to make this decision today, but I did want to start the discussion today.
Mr. Chair, could I make a comment if I might?
Yes, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you for your kind words. And just to kind of, emphasize the chair's comments here. Because of the sad situation, I am the sole remaining partner in Williams Acosta, and have been devoting my efforts to, as has been indicated, winding down. The December 31st deadline is a fairly hard deadline for us. Just wanted to emphasize that to the board. And there's just a lot of practicalities. I won't get into all the details, but insurances and taxes and so on and so forth. So, you know, we do really need to wind things down, unfortunately, and obviously there's a human dimension to all of that too. I want to just also emphasize that I really I can't fill Avery's shoes. It's going to be frankly very difficult for anyone, but we do the best we can. I've enjoyed working with the board, and I do have a background. I was an elected official for a period of time, as I may have mentioned. And what I want to say is that between now and the end of the year, anything that I can do in any capacity, I'll be more than happy to. I don't have a list of names particularly. I could certainly, you know, with my experience and having worked with so many, you know, so many attorneys, local attorneys, I'd be more than happy at any point in time to forward some names that people that I respect and think might serve well. So with that, I just wanted to add a few things.
Thank you, Mr. Domsel. Okay, is there any other questions or any discussion from any other board member at this time?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if there
Mr.
are-
Thomas. Is that Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, Mr. Schaefer, you have the floor.
Yeah, if there is someone or a list of people that I would like to submit, who would I submit them to?
Actually, you'll bring it right here to the board, and you can mention it to the board. You can submit it to Ms. Kangora before our next
Okay.
meeting, and we can address it at the next meeting. You can mention the name if you have particular names and particular people you want to be considered. You can mention it at the next board member or meeting, or again, like I said, you can submit it directly to Ms. Kangora for our discussion at the next meeting. And we
Okay,
will
thank you.
consider it.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome, Mr. Schaefer. Any other members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Thomas, is that Mr. Thomas?
No,
No,
not
that was
Young.
not-
Mr. Chairman, remind me, I was
Oh, Mr.
around
Young.
when
Mr.
we
Young.
initially moved to an outside or to the council, when Avery was retained. Remind me, if you will, what role did Corporation Council, Wayne County Corporation Council play in that decision? Do you remember?
You know, Mr. Young, and that's a good question. As I remember, I don't recall Wayne County Corporation Council having any input in that decision. As the chair recalls, Mr. Williams, there was a few names put forward. Mr. Williams is a name put forward. Several board members knew Mr. Williams, knew his work. He had worked in the county government for some time. So he was a name that was put forward. We did have a vote and we selected Mr. Williams. There was no interview process. And so we did reach out to Mr. Williams first off to make sure that he was able to accept the appointment and was willing to accept the appointment. I'm not sure if he was on the list of attorneys approved by the county, but as I recall, it wasn't a problem for him to get placed onto the list. So I believe that was the process. I don't recall Corporation Council at that time. We didn't have the current Corporation Council. It was this Mr. Heath's predecessor, but I don't recall them having any input.
Okay. I just didn't recall. I know Avery, I believe I was told that he had been and Mr. Domsel, you may be able to clarify this. I think I was told he did have some history in the past of working with the county on other matters, either in a defense posture or something like that, and had been approved. And that was something that worked in all of our favor as such to go forward with him. And I didn't know if that same kind of approval or weighing in by the Corporation Council would have to take place in this matter.
Thank you for that, Mr. Young. Mr. Domsel, do you have any insight into that? If not, possibly Mr. Slizak. Is Mr. Slizak still with us?
Yes, I'm on the line. The Williams Acosta, basically, Office of Corporation Counsel has a list, an RFP, that basically request for proposals list that firms responded to, and Williams Acosta was indeed on that list. And also, just so you know, a contract extension for Williams Acosta, while it goes out a couple of years, obviously with Mr. Domsel, they're wrapping up, that was approved by the Committee on Government Operations last week, and it's going before the full Wayne County Commission tomorrow.
Okay, and so Mr. Slizak, with that, then how does the process work with, because obviously I'm sure the commission knows that Mr. Williams is no longer with us. Is the contract?
Actually,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I probably should defer to Sue Hammoud, who's the Deputy Corporation Counsel, is on this call. So I think it's probably best that I defer to Sue.
Yes, Ms. Hammoud.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, Mr. Slizak I'm sorry, the question, were you questioning specifically with respect to the current contract or prospective contracts?
With actually both. With respect to the current contract, is the contract with Williams Acosta, and is that to be voted on tomorrow? So would that mean that that contract will be locked in, or can we switch it and actually obviously appoint someone else, another law firm?
So with respect to the current contract that is up at full board tomorrow, that is a modification to the contract for Williams Acosta through the end of the year. My understanding is that Mr. Domsel has agreed to serve as counsel for this board until that time. With respect to the selection of an attorney or counsel going forward, obviously the board can make the selection, but that attorney or firm would need to be on the approved outside counsel list that Corporation Counsel has as an approved vendor of the county. There is a lengthy RFP process that those firms go through in order to make the list.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hammoud. Now, how long is that process? So if the board were to select an outside law firm that is not currently on the list, how would they go about getting on the list?
They would go through the, like I said, the RFP process and the procurement process. We have, usually about, I'd say 3 to 4 weeks to get on the list.
Okay. Do you currently have a list of the attorneys that are currently on the list of approved attorneys?
I can submit a list. I can get you guys a list of the current firms that are on the list. Yes.
Thank you. Can you submit that to Ms. Kangora for us to look at for the next meeting?
I will have that done today.
Thank you, Ms. Hammoud.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion from any other members?
Mr. Pinkins, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
We have 2 meetings left before the end of the year, one in November and one in December. And I'm just wondering, as we're sitting here talking about people making recommendations and submitting names, I'm wondering if we can really do that in two meetings that are coming up. I'm wondering whether we should have a subcommittee of the board work on it to make a recommendation to the board. I guess at either the November or the December meeting. And then in the back of my mind is our docket has been relatively light over the summer. And I believe that in large part that's due to COVID and all the aftermath of that. But things may pick up the first of the year. And I'm wondering if we don't have an attorney that's been approved for that list, we don't have somebody that we all agree on. I'm wondering what we're going to do to have representation at the January, February, March meeting if we don't have somebody approved and on board by that time. I guess I'm open to suggestions. I'd like to hear how we're going to handle that.
That's a good point, Mr. Thomas, and thank you for bringing that up. Any other members have any other discussion on that point with respect to what Mr. Thomas just raised?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Young.
Mr. Chairman, it seems to me that, I'm not sure, was I recognized? I don't want to step on
Yes,
somebody else.
yes, Mr. Young.
quickly, just to follow up on what Mr. Thomas had provided. I'm still unsure as to what role we have in conjunction with Corporation Counsel. There's a list of attorneys that'll be approved, pre-approved, however it's designated. And what do? Do we select, or do we make a recommendation to Corporation Counsel as to who we as a group would like to see appointed, or is this the exclusive decision by Corporation Counsel, or what exactly, how does that work? Maybe Ms. Hammoud can let us know.
Yes, Ms. Hammoud, why don't you answer that
Sure.
question?
Sure. Mr. Young, you would select the council. The only, like I said, the only stipulation is that council would have to be on the county's approved vendor list.
Okay, great.
So if they are not on the on Corporation Council's outside council vendor list, they would have to submit for qualification and consideration to get on that list. There is a legal services RFQ committee that meets monthly. So if they're not on the list, they would have to submit all the appropriate paperwork to the county and have to be reviewed and approved by the committee to get onto that list.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hammoud. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may just continue briefly. So it seems to me that if we're going to address the concern raised by Mr. Thomas, we're sort of stuck with whoever's on that list at this point if we want to make the replacement by the end of the year. Unless we have somebody that is willing to go through the approval process with the county and do so quickly, it seems that we're left with whoever's on that list right now. I'm not critical of that. I'm just pointing out that seems to be what we're left with.
I think you're right, Mr. Young. Any further discussion on Mr. Young and Mr. Thomas's points there?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Hammoud.
Yeah, I'm curious to know when the approval committee meeting is from Ms. Hammoud. Because you mentioned it's going to be monthly, just looking at the timeline, and I heard 4 to 6 weeks. So I wonder, how is that time in November?
Yeah, give me one moment. I'm actually looking at my calendar right now. I want to say that the meetings are the 3rd Wednesday of the month. Because I know I just saw an email for one that's supposed to be tomorrow. So yeah, the next one would be on November 17th, provided that that all the documentation is submitted and appropriate. So the next meeting after tomorrow would be November 17th.
And Ms. Hammoud, can you just tell me I'm not sure how familiar you are with the RFP process, but what level of experience, what is the RFP process to sort of get onto this list? What do they look for specifically?
There are certain criteria and qualifications that the county sets forth. I have not been a member of the Legal Services Review Board for some time, so I really cannot tell you off the top of my head. But I know one of the there are certain conditions that are provided by the county. One of which would be the rate, the pay rate that they would have to accept from the county. So their level of experience, what it is, their specialty is, or their experience are, and that they're just meeting the criteria consistent with the county's policies.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hammoud.
Mr. Pinkins.
So,
could I please
Mr.
ask
Chairman, I
Ms.
just would like to comment.
Well, yeah, I think Ms. Lewis has been holding for a while.
Okay,
Ms. Lewis. Yes, Mr. Lewis, you have the floor.
Yes, for the corporate counsel that Mrs. Hammoud suggested that the criteria, it may not match exactly what we're looking for. That might be a concern. I guess we would need to get those RFPs and figure out those qualifications to see if we have a match for some of the qualifications for this board.
Thank you for that, Ms. Lewis. And the chair is going to agree with that. It's just their RFP may not be extensive enough as to what, as you mentioned, what this board may need, what we may be looking for. My concern also is the chair is concerned about, again, how they go through their screening process and whether an attorney from this list is going to be able to act autonomously and not be beholden to any department, but also is strictly loyal to this board. So with that said, any other discussion on this matter? I think Mr. Thomas, you was waiting.
Yeah, yes, I was. Thank you, Mr. Pinkins.
Yes, you have the floor.
This question is for Ms. Hamud. If we do not have an attorney on board because we haven't found somebody that we think is a fit, or because we want to do more digging and get more recommendations, what would we do for council come January, February, March if we don't have somebody by then? Whole concept of having to make a decision in a rushed manner when we only have 2 meetings between now and the end of the year. I guess it's not impossible, but I don't like to see the board have to operate under that type of time constraint, especially in light of what Ms. Lewis just said and what Mr. Pinkins just said. What would we do for council if we don't have somebody on board by January?
Well, let me sort of answer some of that, Mr. Thomas, and because this is concerning some questions that we've had in the past when I became the chair of this board. Actually, this board didn't have an attorney for the board. What happened was Corporation Counsel, to my knowledge, had worked and served as attorney for this board. Now, I didn't, when I became the chair, I immediately put a stop to that because I didn't see how that was necessary, because you had complaints from various officials going to Corporation Counsel for review. And Corporation Counsel is also acting as attorney for this board, but also an attorney representing those who had complaints filed against them. So I felt that that was improper. Also, when I became chair of this board, Corporation Counsel was sitting on some 6 complaints that they had been sitting on for almost over a year. And we have a 350 day time period in which we're supposed to receive a complaint and have it resolved. These complaints have been sitting for about 1.5 years to no knowledge of the board or the chair that had never brought it to the board's attention. So again, this chair put a stop to that. So once we did that, we did go a few months without having an attorney for the board until we selected Mr. Williams. So I do think this board can operate for a month or 2 without having an attorney. The attorney is here to sort of advise us. They are to review and receive complaints, respond to complaints. With Avery's role, we did increase it to the point that he was able to sort of, if a complaint didn't come within the purview of this board, he could sort of take care of it at the threshold, so it didn't even come before this board. So we did expand his sort of role as attorney for the board. But I do think that this board can operate for a month or 2 without an attorney for the board. With that said, I'm not saying that we should sort of sit back and take our time, but I am saying that I don't think this board needs to be rushed into just selecting someone immediately. I think we can take our time to make sure we're getting a good fit and making sure we select someone. Keep in mind, this person is going to have a contract for however long, and we want to make sure that this person is going to be the right fit and someone that's going to have the requisite experience, that's going to be loyal to this board, and someone who can get the job done. So that's just the chair's suggestion. I hope I answered some of that for you, Mr. Thomas.
You did that. Yeah, you did, and that lets a little of the pressure off, at least from my perspective. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any
Mr.
further
Chairman?
discussion? Yes.
Chairman?
Is that Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer, you have the floor.
When I was on the initial commission, we also relied upon the Wayne County Corporation Council. A conflict did come up, and how we resolved it was a recommendation to outside counsel on a on a piece-by-piece basis. We had one when I was on the board. So I think we probably can rely on the Corporation Council unless they come into a conflict until we get somebody on the board to address Mr. Thomas's concerns if we don't have this resolved by January, February. It's an idea.
Okay, and thank you for that, Mr. Schaefer. At this time, the chair, again, I'm going to mention, the chair, I don't personally feel comfortable with complaints coming into Corporation Council, for Corporation Council to review and determine what complaints will come before this board. There's a screening process that our attorney, Avery, and Mr. Donzo goes through when they receive these complaints. I'm not sure if I would be comfortable with Corporation Council. Again, like I said, when I became chair of this board, that screening process was taking place by Corporation Council. And albeit, while it's not the current Corporation Council, it was his predecessor, they wasn't turning over these complaints to the board. These complaints, they were getting them in without our knowledge and apparently just sitting on them. And we had no idea these complaints were even there. So I'm not sure if I would want that responsibility being turned over to Corporation Council for them to get in the complaints, review them, and advise this board of what complaints are within the board's purview or not. Again, the Corporation Council at that time was also serving to represent the defendants. And again, that's also a direct violation of the ethics ordinance, because the ethics ordinance says that a complainant, a person who's recipient of a complaint, is entitled to an attorney. While they don't have to have an attorney, they're entitled to one at their own expense. And my argument is, if Corporation Council is serving as their attorney, that's at the taxpayer's expense because they're paid by Wayne County taxpayers. That's not at that complainant's expense. And I think the Corporation Council, prior Corporation Council, heard me on that, and she immediately said, we're no longer going to be representing any defendants. So I mean, I guess it's a lengthy way of explaining it, but at this chair, I don't feel that I will be comfortable with Corporation Council reviewing our complaints or reviewing any documentation that's coming into this board.
Certainly understandable.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer, for that, though. Any further discussion by any other members? The chair is open. Mr. Thomas did select a possible subcommittee, sort of reviewing this matter, sort of expeditiously. We can have the list of names submitted and we can begin the process now. Obviously, with these list of names, I'm not sure who would know their requisite experience. It would probably be that committee looking at each attorney and possibly delving into their experience. If the subcommittee wants to recommend an interview process, then that's up to the subcommittee to come up with. If the members are in favor of selecting a subcommittee and a chair of that committee to go and start this process, the chair is open to that. So is there any discussion on that matter at this time? Yes, Ms. Hamoud.
Yes, I like the idea, especially to be within the timeline. And the other thing I like to suggest, if we can have like the next board meeting, either before or after the November 17th. I don't know when the approval committee is meeting, on the 17th. So it's either we can, the subcommittee can provide their recommendation to the board. I mean, ideally before the 17th. So this way they would have I'm assuming, and I'm talking here out loud, thinking, I guess, out loud, because if, let's say, the committee is gonna suggest someone, I'm assuming anyone that the committee may consider, they can start the process and they can submit their paperwork by November 17th to be added unless they're already on the list. I mean, am I thinking here appropriately? This is like at least the goal?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just briefly,
yes.
this is Sue Hamoud. First of all, like I said, the regular meetings of the Legal Services Committee are the third Wednesday of every month. If by chance you guys have a selection or a firm that is not on the list and it is, everything is submitted, they can call a special meeting to vote. I apologize for not saying that before. They can call a special meeting to vote on a legal services contract, and not a contract, I'm sorry, proposal to be added to the vendor list. And I do want to clarify and make sure that the qualifications are submitted or are set by county ordinance. They're not set by corporation council per se.
Thank you for that, Ms. Hammoud.
Mhm.
Ms. Hammoud, Mona Hammoud, Member Hammoud, did that answer your question there? Or?
Yeah, I'm just still working on the timeline. If the November 17th is good date for this ethics board.
The chair is open to calling us a meeting sooner than that, so we can meet sooner. If the board members are open to that. If we need to meet in the next 2 weeks, if we can get the list and begin the process, and the board, if we select the committee today and that committee starts working, if the committee can have some sort of recommendation to this board in 2 weeks or at the next meeting, the chair is open to that.
Well, yeah, Mr. Pinkins?
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
Am I okay? One thing that I would say about moving the meeting would be this. I'm of a mind to make a motion that a subcommittee be formed. And I would say this, Mr. Pinkins, you've got the longest history on the board and who our prior attorneys were and how they were selected. I believe, for me personally, if we appoint a subcommittee of the board to look at this, just personally, I'm going to be very much inclined to go with the recommendation or recommendations of the subcommittee. I'm a newer board member. I don't have a lot of history. I don't think that I would be a good person to serve on the subcommittee because I don't bring a lot of history of the board with me. But in terms of the idea of moving up the meeting or adjusting the November meeting, I don't have a problem with that. But what I would have a problem with, and I respectfully say this to all board members, we're going to be making a decision that's going to affect the board for potentially years to come. And I really hesitate to see the process rushed. If a subcommittee was formed with Mr. Pinkins heading it, and let's say one or two, perhaps two other members, I think they're going to need time. I don't think that they're going to be rushed. And from what we've heard here today, it is possible that we could conduct a January and a February meeting and maybe even a March meeting without council. Adjustments could be made. So with all due respect to board member Ms. Hammoud, I don't like to see a process rushed like this. Once we select attorney and we go through all that, that's not only our attorney now with this board, but chances are that individual is going to end up representing the board for some years to come. So I would like to, if everybody agrees, I would be of a mind to make a motion to appoint the subcommittee to do some of this work, to dig around in the backgrounds. And I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a motion that a subcommittee be formed with Mr. Pinkins to head it and with a couple other members who feel that they're qualified and that they have some history with them to serve on it. I would like to be copied on everything that the subcommittee is doing, but I don't necessarily want to have a say in it. I mean, they could even conduct the interviews of the applicants. So my motion is that we appoint a subcommittee chaired by Mr. Pinkins, and that it have two other members on it, two other members of the board on it.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Hammoud, well, there's a motion before the board. We have a motion on the floor. Ms. Hammoud, are you looking to second that motion?
Yes, I second that. And I want to just have a point of clarification that I'm not trying to rush this. I agree with Mr. Thomas. It's just, I wanted to make sure, like, if we're meeting on the 17th and we don't have a decision, if whoever the committee recommended, or if they either approved or not, like I feel like we wouldn't be able to make any decision. So that's why like I wasn't sure if we even, or I wouldn't mind to even delay it, as long as then we can get the information in case the subcommittee recommended something. I wanted to make sure that we give them time to be able to actually know if whatever the recommendation, they got the approval from the county legal service review board. So that was my intention to question the November 17th meeting. Should we even delay it to be able to know? But with Ms. Suhamoud saying that we can have a special, I don't want to rush them either. So that's why I was talking about the timeline.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Hammoud. So we have a motion. It's been seconded. Mr. Thomas, this is your motion. So we're gonna have some discussion. I want you, do you want any discussion on your motion, Mr. Thomas?
No, nothing further, although I do want to let board member Ms. Hammoud know, I did not mean to imply that I thought that we were rushing it. Please do not think that I was saying that. I just want the comfort of getting a good recommendation for somebody that we feel we can all live with. That's my only discussion, Mr. King.
We're in agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Yeah, I think, yes, I think you speak entirely for the board that we don't want to rush this process, Mr. Thomas. We want to make sure we're getting the right person. So with that said, we're going to put this matter to a vote. So there's been a motion to adopt a subcommittee to select or to begin the process of screening and possibly selecting and making a recommendation for an attorney to the board by Mr. Thomas. The motion has been seconded. All in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed indicate by saying nay. Okay, the ayes have it. The motion is carried. Now we're going to begin the process since we've adopted the motion to select the subcommittee. Now we have to begin the process of selecting those members for the subcommittee. The chair can appoint those members. Those members can decide if they want to. Members can volunteer. The chair is open to suggestions at this time. If members want to volunteer, they can do that. If members want the chair to appoint members, the chair can do that. I do know that Mr. Thomas did recommend the chair sort of lead this committee, and a chair is open to do that. But again, I would just want to make sure that members are in agreement with that. I don't want the chair to be seen as though he's sort of usurping any sort of rights here. I want to make sure that everyone is on board with something like that. So this time, the next motion is going to be out here as to either appointment to the board, the subcommittee, or volunteers to serve on the board. So any discussion from any members?
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I make a motion to appoint people.
Ms. Lewis? Okay. So you make a motion to appoint
A
people
lot
to
of the
the
history
subcommittee.
that some of these. So, but would like to be copied or any also involved, maybe sitting on the interview process once we select candidates.
Okay, we have a motion to appoint members to the subcommittee. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion is seconded. There is no motion right now for volunteers. So the motion has been made to appoint members to the subcommittee. The motion has been seconded. Ms. Lewis, I'm not sure if you would like any discussion on your motion. Or if you like us
No
to go
discussion.
straight. Okay.
No discussion necessary.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lewis. We'll go straight to a vote. All members in favor of the chair appointing members to the subcommittee board to select an attorney and make a recommendation for the selection of attorney for the board indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. Well, the ayes have it. The motion is carried. The chair will make the appointment and will appoint those members to serve on the subcommittee. Uh, At this time, I just want to just sort of poll the board a bit because I don't want to make sure that any member who may not have the time to sort of extend to this subcommittee. I want to make sure schedules are open. Ms. Hammoud, does your schedule allow for you to serve on the subcommittee?
I can. I'm not an attorney though, so just as a disclaimer.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, does your schedule allow for you? I know you did say, sir, that you did not want to take part in it,
Well,
but sir, it was your motion. So we're
Yeah.
gonna sort of string you, we're gonna rope you into this one. So how did your,
this comes at a time, with all due respect to all of the board members. I know how busy everybody is. With all due respect, this time of year is a very busy time of year for me because of my practice before the disciplinary agencies, the Judicial Tenure Commission, Attorney Grievance Commission, State Medical Board, all of that. It's just a very busy time of the year, and I am fearful, aside from what I said before about me being a newer member and not having the experience that some other people might have on the board, it's just, I'm so busy right now, I would not be able to devote the amount of time that that may be required. So I'm going to have to decline.
okay, thank you, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Lewis, can you tell the chair whether or not your schedule will allow for you to dedicate the time to serve on the subcommittee, so with the selection of a new attorney for the board?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm available to serve, to select. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Mr. Schaefer, can you let us know whether or not your time schedule or your time will allow for you to extend the time to serve on a subcommittee?
I could do it. I would make time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Mr. Young, can you let the board know if your time would allow? I know you're extremely busy, but I value your insight, Mr. Young. So I just want to find out if your time would allow you to serve on a subcommittee to begin to select the process of selecting an attorney for the board.
Chairman, I sit in the same position as Mr. Thomas for the most part. I'm even having trouble making these meetings from time to time. If need be, I would, I guess, find a way to do it. But may I make just another comment, and that is this. My time remaining on the Ethics Committee is limited. I've been on for quite a while. And the attorney that is selected will be the attorney hopefully representing the committee in years to come. Ms. Lewis, Mr. Thomas, new members to this, and I understand Mr. Thomas is unavailable. Mr. Schaefer's been on, I understand, the committee sometime in the past, but nevertheless, he has a number of years that he would be able to serve. So it seems to me that it might be important. I'm not trying to take away from Ms. Hammoud or anybody else, myself for that matter, but it may be helpful to have some of the newer members on to have that opportunity to develop that relationship and that trust. I don't need to remind you, Mr. Chairman, that Avery was somebody that came on, and it took a little bit of time, but as time moved on, we certainly grew to appreciate his opinions. We trusted his opinions. He played a very valuable role and guided us in those difficult areas. So it's an important position. It really is. And so I'm looking at maybe some of the ones that just have been on for a shorter period of time. Now, I'm not taking away from the chair either. I understand the interaction between the chair and the attorney is triple that of all of the other members combined. So certainly, Mr. Chairman, if you lead that selection committee, that's all fine with me. But if somebody else is able to serve, I really just don't have the time to commit, because quite frankly, I don't know what will be required. If it was one meeting a month, that might be okay. But to me, if we're going to try to put this together quickly, you're going to be meeting 2 and 3 times a month for the next couple of months, and I just don't have that time.
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Young, for those words. Thank you so much. Okay. But at this time, I think that's everyone here. I know Dr. Carnell couldn't make it today. So at this time, the chair is going to sort of move forward, and I'm going to appoint Mona Hammoud, Ms. Lewis, as well as Mr. Schaefer to serve on the subcommittee The chair will serve on the subcommittee with you all, and we'll begin this process. I know Ms. Kangura, Ms. Hamoud Sue Hamoud is going to send over the list of attorneys that are currently on the list of attorneys sort of selected by the county, as well as hopefully we'll get some indication of the RFP process, so we can begin from that point as well. Moving right along, what we'll do is the subcommittee will have discussions, and we'll meet and we'll talk about and how we're going to go about taking on this task. Okay, with that said, if there's any other comment on that subject, we're going to move right along. Any
Mr.
other
Chair,
comment?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Sue Hamoud, Deputy Corporation Counsel.
Yes.
I've already submitted the list, just so that you know.
Do you have any of the RFP requirements at all?
Like I said, those are all prescribed by county ordinance. I can get those to you at some point in the next couple of days as well.
Please, thank you so much.
Okay. And then my last point of clarification for the board, I just want to say that board member Hamoud and I are, although we have the same last name, we are not related. I'm sure she doesn't remember this, but we went through this a few years ago where we had somebody accuse us of some impropriety. We do have the same last name, but we are not related.
And I thank you for mentioning that, Ms. Hamoud, because I was in that hearing when that person had said that.
Yeah.
And I think the chair did mention that. I think it's a common last name, but that person was trying to say that you guys are related.
Right.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Sure.
Okay, with that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, is that
this
Ms.
is
Lewis?
Attorney Johnson for the County Commission.
Oh, yes, Ms. Johnson. How are you?
Just wanted to bring something to your attention for your council or perhaps corporate counsel to weigh in on. I think you just appointed 4 members total to the board, to the subcommittee.
I think it'll be 5.
Which is more than a quorum of this body. So that's not necessarily a subcommittee and will be treated as a committee because it's a quorum, more than a quorum. So I just wanted to bring that to someone's attention because I didn't want this meeting to close with everyone thinking that you're going to proceed as a subcommittee. If you have 5 of 7 members on that body, that will change the way you will actually proceed as far as your discussions. But again, I'm going to just make that slight comment and leave it for your counsel or corporate counsel to further advise you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, but this even though it be perceived as a committee, this committee won't make any, so it won't take any action without the full committee voting on it. So even though we'll have a full quorum to take action, this committee won't be taking any action without the full committee, without the full board voting on it. But thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would echo the comments of Corp Counsel's officer, though, that formalities will need to be observed then in the meetings of the subcommittee, in terms of meeting the, public meeting requirements and so on, open meeting requirements, notices and so on. And I just throw that out there that you may want to be careful what you wish for here, that it may, I don't know if inhibit is the right word, but it may make things a little more difficult for the subcommittee because of the fact they'll have to observe the formalities.
That is true. That is true. And so if I'm correct, let me just ask you this, Mr. Donzo. So if it's 3 members, then are you saying that the 3 members would not have to observe the sort of the formalities of, say, the Open Meetings Act, things like that, if it was down to 3 members, which would be less than a quorum?
Yeah, if you had a subcommittee that was less than the quorum, I think that you'd be safe in not having to meet all the formalities.
Okay.
So I don't, I would suggest, I don't have to be on the committee. So I do trust, the chair, you've been, you have the experience. And then to echo Mr. Roberts, I like the idea of whether Ms. Lewis and Mr. Schaefer to be there. So I would obviously you're the one who's appointing them, but that would be my suggestion, to keep it to the 3, just to be more agile and flexible with how you can communicate with each other.
Mr.
Thank you for that.
Pinkins, is that a motion? Is Mr. Pinkins, could I ask, is that a motion that Ms. Hamud is making? Because if it is, I'm going to second it.
Okay, Ms. Hamud, are you making a motion to?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to keep the committee or subcommittee here to 3 members.
I'll second that. I'm seconding it because I believe you have to operate with a lot of flexibility.
Thank you for that. And so the motion is to keep the committee to 3 members under a quorum made by Board Member Mona Hamud. Has been seconded by Board Member Philip Thomas. All in favor at this time, indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed indicate by saying nay. Okay, the ayes have it, so moved. So what the chair is going to do, the chair will appoint Mr. Schaefer, Ms. Lewis, and myself. I will serve on the subcommittee for the selection of begin the process of selecting a new attorney for the board to make a recommendation to the full board. Okay, is there any further discussion on this matter? That motion is adopted, and we're going to move on to the next item of our agenda, which is item number 2, which is approval of presenting a certificate of appreciation to former ethics board member Freeman Hendricks. We do know that Mr. Hendricks did leave us a little earlier this year. The chair has, it was a pleasure for this chair to have served with Mr. Hendricks all the years of his service. So we are considering presenting him with a certificate of appreciation. Is there any discussion of any members at this time regarding the presenting of a certificate of appreciation to Mr. Freeman Hendricks? Okay. All right, so we're gonna move forward, and I believe Ms. Kongora, Mr. Slizak may be working on that certificate of appreciation. We'll look to present that at the next board meeting. And therefore, we're gonna move on to the next item of our agenda, which is item E, which is such other matters that may be properly submitted before the board. So at this time, do we have any other matters that are before this board?
Through the chair, this is Joe Slazak. Just with the next meeting being Wednesday, November 17th, 9 a.m. At least that's what we had previously agreed upon.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, I think that's in the last meeting minutes we had discussed that. So
Yes.
That should be on everyone's calendar. Okay, with that said, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is item F. Any public comments at this time? Any public comments at this time? Okay, if there's no public comments at this time, I'm going to thank everyone for being here, and the chair will accept an emotion or entertain an emotion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make one editorial comment, I don't want to be out of place, but I want to compliment. In the course of my career, I've sat in on a number of board members, and I think the board is blessed with a very effective chair right now, and I just want to acknowledge that in terms of fairness, in terms of parliamentary procedures. So kudos to the chair.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Domsel. But I have to tell you, with all these accolades that you and Ms. Hamud and everyone has heaped on to the chair, I'm not giving out anything at this time. No. Thank you so much for the accolades. I'm obviously joking. The chair is very appreciative of your words and your comments, and I really thank you for those, Mr. Domsel. And again, this board has to continue to express our sincere gratitude that you're stepping in at such a late time, with even before the passing of Avery. You stepped in when he was incapacitated and sort of hit the ground running. You do have the experience of Avery Williams, your background experience in advising boards. Again, we are very grateful and blessed to have had you step in when you did. There was no training that we had to go through. Like I said, you were able to hit the ground running. So again, thank you so much for that, sir. And for those kind words. With that said, I'm going to move on to item G, which is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn at this time?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, Ms.
Second.
Hamud. Is there a second? Ms. Lewis?
I second.
All right, is there, so we're going to vote at this time. All in favor to adjourn the meeting?
Aye.
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 All opposed indicate by saying nay. Okay, the motion is adjourned, is carried. The next meeting, this body is adjourned. The next meeting will be Wednesday, November 17th at 9 a.m. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Take care.